Hey, it's Trip here from the 87th. This video is about locating airborne targets using Bullseye callouts in BMS 4.33. Information is current as of update 2. Now there's a lot of techniques, I suppose, out there for locating targets using Bullseye. One of them concerns this Bullseye indication in the lower left corner of both MFDs, but it has rules and math involved with it, and in the heat of battle I'm not too good at remembering specific rules and doing mental math calculations. So I thought I'd come up with something easier, more for me, more reliable and easier to use, and that's what I'm going to show you here. Now let's say the AWACS or your wingman calls out a MiG-29 at let's say Bullseye 300 for 50 miles. Well, where is that? Which way do I turn? So my technique involves locating the Bullseye symbol on the HSD, and it's this little blue concentric circle symbol here. I may need to range in or out to find that symbol. And once I've found it, let's see, I said the bandit was 300 for 50. Once I found that circle, I just take a look at my heading. In this case, my heading is, I like to round off numbers, to the nearest 10 degrees when I'm using this technique, because it just 4 degrees is not going to matter, one way or the other. So I can work with 60 a lot better than I can work with 64. So my heading is 060. So if I take a line and take it vertically right out of the center of the bullseye, just straight up, then anywhere along this line is the 060 degree radial from bullseye. And I can actually prove that to you by going to ground and taking my cursor. There's my little white cursor. Now you notice that when I move it, these two white numbers here move. They're showing my radial and DME from Bullseye. So if I put that cursor right over the top, or just as close as I can, about as close as I'm going to get, it says 060, and that's approximately what my heading is, 060. So that is anywhere along this vertical line. As I run this cursor up, you'll see the radial stays the same. The distance from Bullseye will change, but the radial is basically staying the same. And that's about as close as I can get it. All right, so that proves that what I'm saying here, or shows you rather, what I'm saying here is that my heading approximates the radial out of Bullseye. So since I'm going in this direction, straight up toward the top of the HSD, then straight up toward the top of the HSD from Bullseye is the 060 degree radial. So if this is a 060 degree radial, and my target is at 300 degrees, well, the opposite of 060 is 240. So if I come down here, a straight line out of the bottom is 240. Now I know if I go clockwise, in a clockwise direction around Bullseye, my radials will be increasing. So if I go from 240 and I go from this straight line to about 60 degrees over this way, which would be right about here, I would say that anywhere along this line is the 300 degree radial. Well, it's behind me. My radar is looking out this way, and the 300 degree radial out of Bullseye is behind me. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to center the map here so we can see it a little better. When we come off freeze is I need to turn. I need to basically do a 180 degree turn. And so what heading am I going to turn to? I just look at my HSI real quick, and it's about 240. So it's close enough. So let's come off of freeze here and honk it around to a heading of 240. Now I know he's at 50. My radar on the left side over here is showing 160, so I'm going to bump that down to 80. And I'm going to bump up my range here on the HSD. So let's see, we said 240 on the heading. All right, we're coming around here to 240. All right, I'm going to roll out here and freeze it just to show you again. Right now my heading is 245, so a vertical line coming out of the bullseye, this is 245. So if I want to go to 300, I need to go 45 degrees to the right, so right about here. So if I put my cursor in that position, right about there, then 45 from the nose of my airplane, that is, not from the bullseye, but from the nose of my airplane. That's right about there, maybe a little more. And you can see that the indication of my radial from bullseye is 292, and it's at 35. If I just range out a little bit further out in this direction, right about there, that's 296. So there's my target right there. So I would come off freeze and turn closer to that position and roll out there and decrease my range a little bit, because I don't think he's that, well, he might be. And then the other thing is I need to adjust my elevation on my radar cursor there to bracket his altitude, and he should be right there in front of me. Now this CZ, the only reason that's there is because we went to air to ground and I moved the cursor off this current steer point. So if I just hit that OSB next to CZ, that goes away and it's not a factor. So if there was an airplane out here, I should be painting him right there. All right, good enough. Let's say we're in the nav mode and we're just tooling along. We're going to do another problem here. So let's say the Bandit is at 160 for 40, 160 for 40. Well, I'm heading 270, and 160, I know 180 is 90 degrees off to the left, because if I go left, my numbers are decreasing. So if this is 270, this is 180, 160 is going to be right about here. So I want to turn the airplane to heading right down in this area. So if I look at my HSI, that's going to be right about in this area. So about a 140 heading is what I need to turn to. So we turn to 140 and we go to air and get ready for this guy. He's at 40 miles. My DME right now is at 32 or 33, 22 right there. So I've got this guy covered. If I roll out on a heading of 140 or so, I should have him in sight. I got my radar azimuth covering that range, that azimuth, and I've got my distance covered. I should see somebody, and sure enough, probably one of these two targets would have been it. And I can narrow down on them by hovering over it and noticing the bullseye coordinates and get the right target there. All right, I hope this helps. That's my technique, and trip out.